What's good, everyone? Matt here from UK Nets Fans, and I'm joined this week by Aidan and Cammy Anderson, and we are back for another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about KD missing more time with another thing going on. We are going to be talking about some trade rumors, about some big men that may or may not be off the way of their other teams and maybe landing in Brooklyn. Some more all-star details, and the Nets signing Andre Roberson, who makes it probably the third or fourth straight podcast episode where we talk about a new addition to this roster. But we'll also obviously be talking about all the stuff that's been going on the court. It's been a pretty good week for the Nets. But yeah, before we do get involved, make sure you're following us on Twitter and on Instagram at UK Nets Fans. You can follow the pod itself on Twitter at BK to UK Pod. And we're also on YouTube. So if you check out UK Nets Fans on YouTube, you'll be able to watch back all our episodes and see our beautiful faces and all of our Nets merch that we often rock. So yeah, without further ado, we will get into it. Gents, I'm starting to feel for KD. He's out again. He's in again, be it COVID protocols, but this time he's out for at least 2 games. The Nets said initially with a mild left hamstring strain. Disappointed, surprised, happy it's going to be sort of cautious and stuff like that? What do you guys think about KD missing time?
I mean, I think they're going to have to rename the hokey cokey Kevin Durant because, as you say, he's in and he's out. And yeah, it's very frustrating. Obviously, he's been out a few times due to protocols and injuries and whatnot. And I think if I've learnt anything about KD, it's not to get too worried about the fact he's injured. Obviously, he came back off the really serious injury, perhaps one of the worst a basketball player can have. So in comparison, a hamstring injury shouldn't really cause him too many issues. Obviously, he will lose some conditioning, having not played for a few games, and also we're not entirely sure when he's back. Before we started recording, it was reported that he's going to miss the Clippers game as well, so that'll make that another game that he's out. And yeah, he'll maybe need a few games to get back up to speed, but I've no doubt that he will manage to do that. I think, yeah, I can't really see it impacting him all that much in terms of his on-court performance. So yeah, I'm not too worried at all, I must say.
Yeah, I think he must be really frustrated with all of it, to be honest with you, because to obviously sit out that week with the protocols and then get this one game after, I think it was, yeah, after the first game back, he must be absolutely gutted because obviously he's playing so well, and it just must be so difficult to sit out again as well. He's been trying to find his rhythm, but in terms of how much it affects him, I mean, I don't think it'll affect him too much at all. I think Nets fans can obviously find comfort in the fact that we know we've probably got one of the more cautious medical teams in the NBA, and they've always played it safe with injuries since they've basically started with Sean Marks. And yeah, I think you should be fine for the rest of the year. I mean, I think he'll be back personally sometime next week. I think they've probably just been on this road trip. They're obviously away from their own set, and they thought it's maybe best that we just sit him out for the rest of the week and let him recover, and we can make sure he's back 100% next week. I think personally the Lakers game and the Clippers game maybe just came a wee bit too soon for something like a hamstring injury, when you know it can sometimes take a wee bit longer just to feel 100%. But I mean, I think for the first time in Nets history, we go into games where our best players injured, and we can still be confident that we're going to get the win. I mean, we're still going to have enough firepower to beat anyone in the division. I think I actually think it probably benefits us now that we've got 2 of the 3 stars playing with each other. They've all kind of taken turn to play with just 2 guys, which is good to see, because if one of the players does go down with a long-term injury, it means that we already know what they're like playing together, and that could benefit us down the line. But I think sometimes next week, I think we'll have all 3 players back in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, where it's like you just feel sorry for the bloke, because even when he was on protocols or when he's not playing because of this injury, he's still on the sidelines and he's always got a ball with him. He's always sort of practicing drills, or he's always trying to sort of fake getting shots up and all that kind of stuff. So the guy just wants to come back and play basketball, especially even when he was able to string a good few games together. There was sort of borderline MVP talk, or he was in the kind of wider conversations. So, we've said a few times on this pod, it would have been, in terms of narrative for that MVP race, to have KD come back and absolutely storm it as he has been, would make for a lovely story for him to get his second MVP. So yeah, that is a bit of a shame, but you guys absolutely nailed it on the head, where ultimately it would be lovely if he came back and played the Clippers, but it's still February, so we've got a lot of season left. We've not even hit the halfway mark yet, so just there's no rush. We're still doing fine, and as you say, we've still got all-star starter Kyrie Irving, which we'll touch on later. We've got James Harden playing the best basketball of his career. And yeah, the rest of the team, which we're going to go on to at length, I think, in this podcast, have absolutely stepped up. So there's absolutely no need for him to come back. So just take all the time you need. It's absolutely cool. I did think maybe sort of thinking worst case scenario, was this the leg that he did his Achilles? And it wasn't. So this is a left hamstring, and it was his right Achilles that he did. So I was wondering, oh God, because they're pretty close. So if it could be kind of any sort of danger there of aggravating that injury he had that was so long term. But I don't think it is. It's just one of those things. It would be good to see, a lot of people are making a lot of noise about the Nets big three not having had many games together. So it would be nice to get those in as we can. But again, it's just one of those things. And I'm sure he'll be back fit and firing as soon as he's ready. But yeah, get him back to HSS and get him rested up in Brooklyn, and he'll be fit and firing, I think. Talking of fit and firing, though, another player out with an injury is Spencer Dinwiddie. Remember him? So obviously massive fan of Spencer. He's been quite quiet since he partially tore his ACL. But he took to Instagram this week to show off the fact that he's 10 weeks ahead of schedule for his rehab. And he's posted a video with him kind of doing some kind of resistance training and kind of workout in the gym. He was spotted a week later by Alex Sturm, and he was doing some kind of free weights training. Yeah, he said that what he normally does is 15 weeks down the line, and he's doing it in 5. So do you think he comes back this season?
No, I don't. And probably for the same reasons that I mentioned why KD hasn't came back. The Nets are so safe with injuries. And I think with something like that, I don't think they'll rush him back and obviously risk further injury to quite a young career. It's funny that you did mention the Instagram video there, Matt, in terms of obviously him showing off the progression he's made. You just wonder, obviously with the trade deadline coming up quite quickly, why is he showing off showing off his progression? You just wonder if he is trying to get that traction from teams thinking, hold on, he may come back at some point and we can utilise that. So could have something to do with that. Obviously great to see him doing so well. I mean, Spencer's obviously had some horrible injuries in his young career, and he always seems to come back and come out the adversity even better. And I hope he does, because it is such a shame, because obviously they held on to Spencer through the years when they've been improving. He's been there kind of since the beginning of the rebuild, and they've held on to him because he is so important to this team. And I do feel sorry for him that he's probably going to miss the best next season in a long time. But yeah, I can't see him coming back this early.
No, knocking, obviously, it's fantastic that he's managed to make the progress that he has done. Obviously, when you're able to do something 10 weeks in advance of when you should, that's always good news. But as Aidan rightly says, we're going to be cautious, and we'll probably take what was the kind of advised timeout anyway. We're not going to chance anything, and that's even if he's with us past the trade deadline. I think the point Aidan raised about him posting this, I think that's a really good point. It could well be to kind of show teams, listen, I'm not actually that far away. And I mean, fair play to him, because if that is what he's done, he's maybe actually done us a favour as well in that, because if we're trying to trade someone, you're going to imagine Spence's name's going to be kind of at the top of that list. And yeah, I think it kind of helps us if teams see that he's well, obviously he's nowhere near ready, but if he's a lot closer to it anyway, shall we say, that yeah, teams are probably more likely to take a chance on him. And if it manages to get as a good player, I don't think anyone's really going to complain. Spence is a smart guy, and I think this will certainly be something he's calculated and realised what could kind of come from this video. So yeah, I think it's probably not possible for him to return this season. If he does, I don't think it would be with us. I think he probably will be traded if there's a deal on the table.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, I think I think I'm just naive when it comes to stuff like this. I always take stuff on face value where I was like, oh great, he's just doing really well. He's just doing well in his rehab and that. But yeah, you guys are absolutely right where you think that, this stuff's calculated, especially with a bloke that's as intelligent as Spencer is. He's an absolute genius off the court, I think. And obviously he's representing himself. I think this is a career year for him, a contract year for him. Sorry. So he's definitely going to want to maximize his potential, and whether that be in a Nets jersey or it's a starting role in another team, that remains to be seen. But yeah, I think for him, I hope obviously all the stuff comes back as quickly as possible and he does make a full recovery. Selfishly, I want to see him on this team. I think he would, if Spencer was back was with us this season. I'm not sure that he would still be with us anyway. He might have already have been traded. You never know. But yeah, our bench would be even deeper, I think, if Spence was playing. So remains to be seen. Fingers crossed he comes back all right. But he might get traded away. We don't know. But talking about trades, it was a busy old beginning of the week talking about potential trade targets. But coming to Brooklyn, we saw that Andre Drummond in particular has been making a bit of a splash this week. He was spotted wearing a hoodie that said farewell on his Instagram story on Sunday night, Monday morning for us, which led to lots of Nets fans speculating whether or not he'd be in Brooklyn. Reportedly, he's not happy since Jarrett Allen was traded there, who obviously Jarrett Allen has gone on there and absolutely bossed it. Woj later went on TV, I think it was First Take or ESPN or something, and just said that Brooklyn were interested. But yeah, so there's been a lot of Andre Drummond talk again. I know we've kind of touched on this, but does this week make you guys think that a Drummond trade is any closer?
I think based on the kind of recent news, I think it would suggest that there's something a bit closer. I'm sure I'd read somewhere that the Cavs have set their sights on Jarrett Allen being their starting centre for the future. Obviously, we spoke a few weeks ago on the fact that they've got about 10 centres. And yeah, you can completely understand why they're going for Jarrett Allen, given kind of his age and his potential. But that's not to say that Drummond's not a fantastic player. And he'd certainly be a player who could add something for us. Obviously, the wages, I'm not kind of sure how they'd fit in. I think maybe a buyout would be required and we'd maybe need to get a wee bit creative. But if we can trade our way there, I'm sure Sean Marks will manage to do it somehow. And I think even if we did lose a little bit of bench depth, adding Andre Drummond could be worth a bit more than having 2 or 3 guys at the bottom of the rotation who probably wouldn't play in the latter stages of the playoffs anyway. You're wanting the team that can do the business kind of right out the way. You're not wanting to deal with guys 9, 10 and 11 in the rotation. So yeah, if a trade for Drummond's possible, I'd certainly be up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. I do think this happens at some point. I do think Andre Drummond will be a net at some point in the season. I don't know when, but I'm pretty confident actually that something's going to happen. There's just been too much talk for there not to be some truth there. Obviously, they say there's no smoke without fire somewhere, and I do believe that is the case with this one. I mean, we've seen kind of plenty of mixed reports about interest in Drummond. I think Shams was the first one to drop it. I think he said that there was, I think it was the Raptors, he said, were interested in him. And then Woj came out a couple of minutes later saying no teams are interested and there's been no talks regarding Andre Drummond, which was quite an interesting back and forth from probably the two biggest reporters in the NBA. I found it a bit confusing, to be honest with you. I mean, Woj reported obviously that there'd not been any trade talks with any other teams for Andre Drummond, but they haven't discussed a buyout at all so far. From looking back in the history, that's quite a common tactic from NBA teams when they don't tend to mention buyouts, because it's almost seen as a last resort because they could get something decent in return. But just from looking at kind of different teams that could maybe try and get Drummond, it's a really, really, really difficult move to make. And I don't think he'll sign for I don't think he'll be traded to any other team, and this one will end up being a buyout. I think it could happen quite soon. I think just with the fact that they've decided they're going to sit him until basically a move's done, says a lot about Andre Drummond. I don't think they'll want to keep him around there if he's not going to be playing, because he's a big personality, and I don't think they'd be wanting that in a young Cavs dressing room. And I think, if he does get bought out, you'll find that you'll probably sign for a team within a couple of days, maybe a couple of hours, just because he is going to be one of the more prolific players that could be bought out at the deadline. And yeah, I'd say the Nets are definitely the favourite to get him. I'll say I'm probably 80% confident that he'll actually be a Net at some point.
Nice. I love that. Still sticking to your guns. I'll admit that I've not watched lots of Andre Drummond, but obviously looking at him leading the league in rebounds and all that kind of stuff, he's, an 18, 15 a night kind of a guy, which is great for us. Obviously, the Nets we all know that the Nets need some rim protection. We've tried it with Norval Pell coming in and Noah Vonleh coming in and all this kind of stuff. So if we can get someone the caliber of Andre Drummond coming in and joining this team, then I think you do it. It's physically impossible, I think, that he gets traded out of Cleveland, because I don't think there's any team out there that could or would put a $28 million package together, when I think he's got a player option next year anyway. So it's like, it would be a lot of room to make for half a season of Andre Drummond. So with that, I think it is a buyout situation. And yeah, I like what you said, where there's no smoke without fire. There's been too much chat of him wanting to come to Brooklyn for it not to be at least somewhat possible. But yeah, I think with I was listening to one of the NBA UK fans live at fives that they do on Instagram, and they were talking to a Cavs reporter, and they were saying that Andre Drummond is a little bit stat paddy, and him blocking shots he's not actually as prolific as you think. I know there's more that goes into rim protection than blocking shots, but it's pretty important. So I would be hesitant to think if he came in, we'd be absolute locks for anything. But is he better than Noah Vonleh? Yes, he is. Is he better than DeAndre Jordan? Probably on some nights. DeAndre Jordan has been doing all right. So we'd have to see. But yeah, it would definitely plug a hole. Again, one of those things, time will tell. I would like to see it happen. But I guess we'll have to wait until buyout season is fully upon us to see what happens. But he ain't staying in Cleveland. That's for damn sure. And I'm sure you guys have seen that Draymond video that went round of him absolutely battering the NBA for doing that as well. So that was a bit of fun this week. So as well as Andre Drummond, there was a little bit about Blake Griffin, who's going to be on the move as well. Detroit saying they're not going to play him until they sort of figure out what they're going to do with him. He actually worked out with KD, Kyrie, and James Harden this past summer. But yeah, so if you could take Drummond or Griffin, who would you take?
Definitely Andre Drummond. I'd say. I mean, Blake Griffin, good player. I mean, I've kind of always loved him. I loved seeing him and DJ and the Clippers. It was a really fun team. But we've certainly seen in the last few years when we played Detroit, he's not the player he once was. And yeah, that one will be a lot more tricky with the money that he's due. He's still due like another 30 million or something like that next year. And I actually think Blake will probably end up heading out west again, because I think he's pretty gutted when he got traded from LA to go to Detroit. Imagine that culture shock moving from LA to Detroit. Must have been an absolute killer. And I think he's probably still a bit better at the Clippers. So I reckon he'll probably end up joining somewhere like the Lakers or Golden State, and heading out for a bit of sunshine again.
Nice.
I mean, yeah, I think if you're picking between the two of them, it's got to be Andre Drummond. He's a player that we need more than a Blake Griffin, who, as Aidan rightly says, is a shell of his former self. And whilst it would be great to kind of see Lob City Clippers, 2/3 of Lob City Clippers return, much like much like Griffin, DeAndre Jordan's also probably past it as well. So I wouldn't get my hopes too much up if Griffin did arrive. Obviously, yeah, he's just not, and it's such a shame, because when you think back to his early years when he was doing all these crazy athletic dunks, and he looked like he was going to be one of the stars of the league, but yeah, he's just completely kind of fizzled out. And yeah, it's a no-brainer for me. If you're picking one of the two and you can only get one of them, it's got to be Drummond.
Yeah, clean tweet from me as well. I thought I'd ask the question, but yeah, it's Drummond over Griffin. Who I saw a stat this week that Blake Griffin hasn't dunked a basketball since 2019, which is
Mental.
crazy to me, considering obviously what he's come from. I know his knees are made out of styrofoam now, so that's probably got something to do with it. So, but yeah, that was a strange old stat to see. But talking from players who are potentially on their way down from their former glory to the All-Star game. I know we spoke at length about the All-Star game last pod. So if you want to see our thoughts on that, make sure you go check out last week's pod. But more All-Star details have been announced. So on Thursday, the NBA announced the starters for the 2021 All-Star game, which is somehow still happening on the 4th of March in Atlanta. And the Nets have got 40% of the starters in the East, with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant playing. KD obviously also captaining the team, being voted in. How can we make it happen that all the Nets three big three get on the same All-Star team at the same time? That's got to be something pretty impressive for a Nets team, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely impressive. And the fact that James Harden isn't a starter, I mean, just going to kind of shows the quality that we've seen in the league. Obviously, he's missed out to Bradley Beal. And I mean, Nets fans will argue Harden should be in there, but you've got to give credit to Beal, who has been absolutely sensational on a very poor Wizards team. Obviously, I'm saying very poor. They've beaten us a few times this season. But yeah, Beal is a fantastic player, and obviously a player who, prior to Harden coming in, I think in one of the first episode or two of this series of the podcast, there were the kind of rumours about Beal to Brooklyn, and obviously that didn't happen. There's kind of continued rumours that Beal could be leaving the Wizards, but I mean, I can't see it happening, and it's unfortunate because I absolutely love him at the team. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you can really complain too much about the All-Stars and having three there. I think that's fantastic, and I mean, you could say that they were all kind of givens, given they're all kind of superstars, and obviously the NBA weren't the main players, but they've all been fantastic this season. Obviously, the Scary Hours trio haven't played too much in Brooklyn together, but the glimpses we've seen of them all together have certainly been very, very promising. So, yeah, one thing I do want to point out, though, is the fact that KD, obviously, if he stays out another week, it will then be All-Star week. It'll be interesting to see if he then returns immediately for that All-Star game, because, I mean, it would, obviously, I think there's maybe a contractual obligation there that you've got to play if you're selected, unless you're properly injured, if you get what I mean. But yeah, I'd be a wee bit annoyed if he kind of doesn't get to play the next, kind of say, last game before it, but then he goes and plays the full All-Star game. And granted, the All-Star game's just it's not really a game, is it? It's just really low intensity, boys having fun, and just them being celebrating. They've just got to do something to be celebrated, so they just don't defend and shoot from half court all the time. So yeah, I mean, hopefully all our players come through unscathed, not typically a match that injuries come from, but yeah, looking forward to it nevertheless, even though we've maybe said it probably shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably KD being the captain will do anything he can to try and get Harden and Kyrie on his team. I think that'd be really, really fun. I mean, absolutely chuffed to bits for KD. I mean, the fact that we've actually got a Brooklyn Nets and All-Star captain, I don't think I'd ever see that as a Nets fan, especially when I first started being a Nets fan. I wouldn't dream of that actually being a thing. So it's quite incredible. And obviously after the last 2 years that he's had, no one deserves it more, because he has came back and he's been absolutely outstanding. Also, obviously buzzing for Kyrie. I mean, I saw that the media in their rankings had him rated as the fourth in guards, which is obviously, they're still completely bitter about that start to the season with all the media stuff, and it's so evident and it's pathetic. And then the fans and the players had him ranked as the number one guard, so he obviously got in there, and yeah, buzzing for him. Yeah, I mean, that was interesting what you said there, Cammy, about Beal. I personally think that Harden should have been in there over Beal. And yeah, I'm probably just being biased, but I think any player, regardless of the numbers that he's putting up, which is obviously great numbers, in a losing team, shouldn't be starting in an all-star team. And I think when you look at certain players that kind of take over the league just with like being their kind of solo option, and then they're getting like winning at the same time, I'd understand that. But yeah, in a losing team, I still think Harden should be in there. But it's a bit of a weird one. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not that excited for the All-Star game. I remember when D'Angelo Russell first got announced as an All-Star, and I was really, really excited because it was just something new, and you just felt that it was kind of like because it was like there was a chance that he got in as the reserve, but because I expected KD, Kyrie, and Harden to get in, I don't know if that's affected my excitement, but I also think it's the fact that we won't see the Nets play for like a week. And I just think that's absolutely gutting that we won't see the Nets play for such a long time. And I think I'm so focused on the league that I'm not that bothered about the All-Star game. But I saw that they're still doing the 3-point contest. So if you maybe chuck Joey Buckets in that, then maybe that'll kind of increase my excitement. But I'm not too bothered, to be honest with you. I'd much rather that they just carried on the league.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, especially with all these games getting postponed, that it would have been a nice way to kind of have sort of restructure the schedule a little bit so they can fit those games that should have already been played in. But we are where we are. I think I sit somewhere in the middle of you guys where it's like I'm not really that excited, but I know once it comes on, I'm going to be proper buzzing and watching it, and of course I will be. And there will be a point when all three of the Scary Hours trio, or the notorious BI3, that they'll all be on the court at the same time. And there's going to be, like, over the last couple of seasons, there's been like the team logo on that All-Star jersey as well. So there's going to be 3 Nets All-Stars on the court at the same time in the All-Star game. And yeah, I can't think of too many. I'm sure the Lakers have had some at some point. Possibly even the Warriors have had 3 All-Stars at the same game. But yeah, it doesn't happen very often. And I think we just got to take a sit back and just, appreciate what we've got going on. But yeah, it's like you said, it's almost like because you expect it, it's almost like, oh yeah, oh God, All-Star game, they're going to get hurt, and I hope he comes back and all that kind of stuff. Hang on a minute, we should really appreciate what we've got going on. But yeah, very, very cool. One more bit of business before we get on to talking about the games. The Nets with another sign-in. The Nets sign 29-year-old guard/forward Andre Roberson to a non-guaranteed minimum contract. I remember Roberson coming back in the bubble, and it was his first game in sort of 2 years, and they had this big thing where all the bench were really, really happy. Looks like a really good sign-in. I checked in with Tom from OKC UK, who said he's still really, really good defensively. He developed a bit of an outside shot, so he feels exactly what this Nets team need. What do you guys think of the Andre Roberson sign-in?
Yeah, I mean, we saw a few minutes of Andre in the Lakers game, but it was evident that he's not lost anything on the defensive end, should I say. He was I don't know who it was in the Discord, but described him as a brick wall for the minutes he was on the court. And he looked so good. He just looked like he had that kind of just that extra knowledge that certain players have defensively, that they just know where to be all the time. And we've needed that in this team. So I think it could be a really kind of important and underrated move for the Nets. And I'd say that probably Andre Roberson, out of all the guys that we brought in the last few weeks, is probably the most likely to stay on the team. I'd probably go as far as saying he's probably the best on-ball defender that we actually have in the team right now. And for me, that's enough of a reason to keep him around. Obviously, you mentioned that he's kind of played with OKC for the majority of his career. He's had good playoff experience with them. He's played in some really important games. Obviously, he joins the ever-growing list of ex-Oklahoma guys that we've got in this team. But the crazy thing is that's not even his biggest link to the team. I mean, he's Spencer Dinwiddie's brother-in-law, which is absolutely crazy. But yeah, I had a wee listen to his interview earlier on today that he done with the Nets press bunch. And yeah, he was talking about Spencer, and he was saying that they've been talking kind of like family meals, that they've wanted to play together for about 3 years now, which is nice to hear. So maybe we might get to see Spencer playing with Andre down the line. But yeah, huge fan of this move. Again, it's very clear to see that Sean Marks is trying to improve defensively with the moves that he's made recently. And I think this one could be a home run.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite keen on this move, despite the fact I think he's only played 8 games since the start of the 2018-19 season. That's obviously very worrying. Obviously, the season before that, he was an NBA All-Defensive Second Team member, so that's one of the top 10 defenders in the league. So yeah, if he manages to get back to that level, even on the defensive end, we don't really need anything offensively. We've got the best offense in the league at the moment. We're scoring 122 points odd a game now, so we don't really need that. What we need is defense, and it's something that we've needed throughout the season. some people would have maybe preferred a centre to have been brought in who can defend. But as Aidan says, I think Roberson's a fantastic on-ball defender, and if he manages to help us with his defensive work, then I think that's all we can really ask. He won't be top of the rotation, so he'll maybe be in the kind of gritty moments of games, and we kind of need a player like that. And I think players like that can often be underrated, and I think given it's a minimum non-guaranteed deal, that there's low risk as well. So if it doesn't work out after a few games, it can be cut. And but we've not really wasted anything. As Aidan said, looked all right in that Lakers game, and obviously just got to wait and see what he does in the upcoming games. Certainly based on the kind of past few signings we've had, they've not had much time. Vonley and Pell, who's obviously now been waived, and I think he's now going to be playing for the Cavs G League team in the Gubble. I think it was, or it's them or it's the Magic. It's one of the two. So he's obviously there, and I think it made sense to bring someone in, as Aidan says, another OKC thing. So I'm fully expecting Russell Westbrook in Brooklyn next week, going by how things have went. But happy enough with the signing. Just got to wait and see what he does.
Nice. Maybe Kendrick Perkins will come out of retirement and join this team if we need a big. I hope not.
No,
I hate that bloke. But anyway, I think it's an interesting one, because I know when he got signed with the Nets, there was talk of the Nets were sort of tossing up between Andre Roberson and Iman Shumpert. Obviously, the Nets went with Shumpert, maybe because it's a bit of more of a known quantity. He's been with the Nets before. He hasn't had as long as an injury layoff, but then he goes down with a hammy. So perhaps if Iman Shumpert came in healthy, we may not have seen this Roberson deal. But I think they're both here on to do a similar job. So I think they might be gunning for each other's minutes. So that'd be good for competition. But I think from what we saw late in that Lakers game, if he can provide some wing defense and general be a defensive leader on the floor, then I think that's nothing but good. It's something we sorely need, something we've been after for a while. So really, really good. Another great sign-in by this team. Can't wait to see who we sign next week, because it's obviously going to keep rolling, but we shall see. And that takes us on to the games. We're still on this West Coast trip, and it's going pretty well. Started off with Monday with a big W over the Sacramento Kings, a game which the Nets won 136-125. The Nets hit 27 threes, which is a franchise record for threes made in a game. And we also managed to keep the efficiency high, shooting 57.4% as a team from three. So red hot. Kyrie goes for a season high of 40 points, 9 of 11 from three in just 31 minutes. And we've tied the record for the third most threes in an NBA game by one team. Guys, what did you make of that Kings game?
I mean, this was a game where it seemed like it was all-out attack and not really fussed about the defence. As we've said on many previous podcasts this season, we've had many games like this. And I mean, whilst it's fantastic to watch and see us score upwards of 120, 130 on nights, it's not so good, especially when you're conceding 6 to 8 points in the first half. We scored 74, which is just about the franchise record for points in a single half. It was only a few games ago where we matched the franchise record, which is I think 75 or 76 in the first half. So it was absolutely fantastic. As you say, we were red hot. Kyrie hit 9 threes, which was absolutely insane, like Steph Curry levels of 3-point shooting from him on the night. Obviously, I said there wasn't much defense played. We did kind of play better defense in the third. We limited them to just 20 points, but then all the hard work was undone when we let them score 37 in the fourth. And the game, although we did win by 11, probably finished a lot closer than it should have. I mean, I think we could have easily won this by 20 plus had we not let up 37 in the final quarter. As you say, Kyrie was absolutely insane, and hugely efficient night for him. Defo, one of his best in a Nets jersey, as you say, 40 points, 70% from the field and 81% from free, which is mind-blowing. Obviously, you get players who maybe shoot that and they've maybe shot 4 or 5 shots, but he shot 9 from 11, which is, unbelievable, and fantastic to kind of keep the run going and start the week off with a win.
Yeah, I mean, you don't often get rain in Sacramento, but it was raining threes on Monday night. I mean, it was for the Nets anyway. Sacramento weren't as good, but the Nets were just unbelievable. Absolutely ridiculous shooting numbers for the Nets. I mean, 27 made threes is absolutely crazy. It felt like there was a three like every 30 seconds. It was just madness. And here was me thinking that we'd maybe be shooting the three less now that Kenny Atkinson's gone, but it seems to have even increased even more. I mean, for this one, it's hard not to talk about how good Kyrie and Harden are. I mean, for me, they've definitely solidified the title as the best backcourt in the league. Don't give me kind of Dame, CJ, Steph, Clay. I think they're nowhere near. And either one of the guys can go off on any night, and that's usually enough for the Nets to get the job done. Yeah, Cammy, you spoke a lot about the defense. Wasn't good again. It's one of these things. It just seems to be, as long as we defend well in one quarter, it seems to be enough to get the job done. And the third was the quarter in this one where we seemed to manage to get it together, and that was enough for us to break away and get the job done this one. I mean, it's hard. It's obviously, this is a really kind of important win for the Nets in terms of the kind of whole record against losing teams. I mean, you've seen the question being asked to Steve Nash and a few of the other guys as to what they think about that. Why is your record so good against winning teams? Why is your record so poor against losing teams? And they always act like they don't care, and they're just like, yeah, we take each, but they totally care. And it's definitely plays on their mind as well when they come up to these games. So for that, I think they needed to win this one, and you can tell that they really did kind of give it their all. And I think since that Detroit game, everything's changed, and I think they're out of that slump of losing against teams with negative 500 records.
Nice. Well, as BK to UK podcast jinxes go, I think that's got to be a key a key one for the future with that being over. But we'll see. But yeah, it was a wicked game. James Harden had 29, 14, and 13. And in this game, he tied the second most triple doubles in franchise history. He's only been with us 5 minutes, and he seems to be breaking a new record every single week, which is every single game, I should say, which is really, really cool to see. What I like seeing was Uncle Jeff getting up and having the highlight play, cranking it back and dunking on people. Really, really cool. And shout out to Sacramento's social media team, who after the game posted a video of their court, and they were like, okay, Nets, and they kind of photoshopped the 3-point line out from one of the sides. And it was just like, you need to stop doing this to us. So that was really, really cool. I absolutely share your sentiments as well. Like, something's turned now. Obviously, with the subsequent games that we'll get onto in just a second, since that Detroit loss and since that Pacers win, something's definitely clicked. I think there was some sort of players. There was Jeff Green said something, I think, to this team. I haven't been able to find out what exactly it was, but we've definitely turned the corner now. And yeah, like you say, it was just a really, really dominant win, more dominant than the final score would suggest, but a win nonetheless, and that's really, really good to see. We went on to Tuesday, so the second night of a back-to-back, but we also managed to pull off a win against the Phoenix Suns, winning in the end 128-124. The Suns were actually on a 6-game winning streak, and we were on the back-to-back, so I wasn't really holding up much hope. I remember on the last episode, we kind of said that this might be one of the games that we drop on this road trip. But this was my favorite game of the year so far. No KD, obviously, sitting. No Kyrie, out with back soreness, I think it was, or it was finger. Down 24 points at one point to storm back and weather a late Chris Paul explosion in the fourth quarter to win it. Yeah, favorite game of the year so far. What do you guys think of the Suns game?
A special game. I mean, there's plenty to be said about the Nets and how their culture is gone with the players that built it, obviously originally not being there anymore, but you really did kind of feel that grit of the Brooklyn culture during the comeback in the second half. And it's one that we've obviously seen in previous seasons, but it's hard to find around the league, a team that can find the willpower to come back like the Nets did in that second half. Really, really special. I mean, James Harden's obviously going to receive a lot of the plaudits in that one. Obviously, he was the only big three player that was out there, and we saw Houston Harden with a superb kind of 38, 7 and 11. But this one was really a team effort, and we saw some guys step up in the second half to put that extra effort in to obviously come back to get the win. Shout out to Tyler Johnson again. He obviously started this one. I thought he was really, really good. Landry Shamet really turned his game around. Jeff Green has been consistent, but he was really, really good in this one again. I think obviously with in the past few seasons, like you think of the Suns, you always kind of think it could be a win, but it's easy to forget that the Suns are a really, really good team now. And I think they're tied fourth in the Western Conference at the moment, I think, with some really, really good players. And obviously there was a lot of comparisons getting thrown around to the Kings game 2 years ago with the D'Lo comeback and the RHJ stuff. And I think it was only a couple of days off the anniversary of that actually when the game happened. And that felt so special at the time. But obviously that Kings team was nowhere near the standard of the Suns team. And I think this, you've called it, I think it's probably one of my favourite performances this season so far, but it's definitely one of the better halves that we will see kind of for the rest of the season when all said and done. Just a massive, massive comeback and a huge win.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got that absolutely spot on, declaring it as a special game. When you have a comeback like that, it's always going to be special. And yeah, I mean, considering a few weeks ago we'd go down in games and that would be game over and you'd be as well turning off the screen come half time, this was a game where we just kept going, and it was like, as Aidan says, the kind of grit of the Nets culture team, if you like, of old. They just turned up. So many players who are certainly fighting for minutes. Aidan rightly says Tyler Johnson, who I think's actually done quite well recently. Obviously not a player who got many minutes at the start, but he's someone who's certainly come off, and I think it's certainly warranting more minutes anyway. And have to give a shout out to Joey Buckets as well. 21 points, 5 threes, and yeah, what can this man not do? He's just absolutely superb. There was a stat you shared, Matt, I can't remember if it was after the Suns or the Lakers game, about his free point proficiency, and I'd just like to say, I called this. I said in the kind of preview episode that he was going to be the best 3-point shooter in the league, and yeah, he is. So yeah, maybe listen to those predictions from me. Maybe don't listen to my predictions for weeks ahead though, because they don't tend to go so well. But yeah, absolutely buzzing with this one, and to manage this one without KD and Kyrie makes it even more special, considering we only had Harden, and I'm saying only had Harden like he's not an MVP caliber player, but yeah, fantastic, and a great way to kind of continue that winning run.
Yeah, wicked. I think especially with Harden this season particularly, you've seen him get at players and you've seen him be really, really invested in doing the right thing and playing hard. And I think, with Harden, I think this season, especially with moving to Brooklyn, all he said with that move was that he wants to win. So I think he's really, really invested in grinding out these wins and playing the right way and playing hard for 48 minutes and kind of winning these games that we should be winning. But yeah, it was absolutely huge. Phoenix scored 75 points by halftime. But after the game and after that huge win, this was the now infamous and now very memeable All Vibes in There, Baby. It's All Vibes by Steve Nash. So yeah, really, really cool. Jeff Green also said after the game that they were aggressive on defense and they were communicating more throughout the game, which is really, really good. And I think that's just chemistry and playing together more. But I just want to give a special shout out to Landry Shamet for that D he played on Devin Booker. He was just he's the smallest brick wall I've ever seen in my life, but he was, Devin Booker was trying to back him up, and Shamet was having absolutely none of it. So that was really, really good to see from Landry Shamet. And yeah, James Harden's go-ahead free with the bench going nuts. Yeah, what a way to finish a game. I think it's another one of those games, if you're trying to get someone into basketball, get them to watch that, because both teams were red hot. And yeah, what a storming comeback. Really, really cool. But then we went on to another game. So we had a day's rest for us to get over that game. But then on Thursday, we had a huge win in LA against the Lakers, where the Nets won 109-98. It was the number one offense versus the number one defense. And offense won. I know, for all that talk of defense winning championships and stuff like that, if you got to try and stop us, we keep saying it. I know there was no AD or there was no Dennis Schroeder, but there was no KD. There was no Spencer Dinwiddie. There are players that missing from both sides. But who wasn't missing was Joe Harris, who went 6 of 7 from 3. Huge game from James Harden, 23 points, 11 assists, and 6. TLC even coming in hot with a career high 5 threes made. The Nets were up by 25 at one point in this game against the Lakers in LA. What did you guys make of the Lakers game?
I mean, this wasn't quite the spectacle I think any of us were expecting. Obviously, we'd all kind of billed it as a potential finals matchup, and obviously the injuries to players on both sides kind of took away from it. But regardless, I think this is still a statement when you can only beat what's out in front of you. And yeah, the team done really well. You mentioned TLC, but I want to mention Landry Shamet, obviously a player who none of us were particularly keen on initially, but in the past few weeks he's really turned up. The stat I managed to work out was this is now the 7th game in his last 10 where he's managed to hit double figures. So when you're getting that kind of consistent contribution, you can't really complain too much. I've also got to give a shout out to LeBron James as well. Obviously, not a player on our team, and in this game he hit his 35,000th career point. Yeah, 35,000. He's now third in the all-time standings behind, I think it's Malone and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And yeah, I think you've just got to congratulate that because that is a fantastic achievement. And yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely buzzing with this one. We're now 10-1 against teams above 500. And yeah, long may that streak continue. It certainly bodes well for later on in the season. And hopefully the next time we face the Lakers, it will be with both of us having full strength sides so we can really see what this fixture is about. Obviously, we'd all said, they need to worry about how to stop KD, Harden, Kyrie. It's Joey Buckets have to worry about, as you said, Matt, absolutely on those six threes from 7 attempts is superb, and you can't ask for much more than that. Joey is on fire at the moment, and yeah, long may that continue as well.
Yeah, I mean, this one was the big one. I mean, Nets fans have been talking about this one for weeks. They've had it circled on their calendar for a very long time. Same with Lakers fans as well. But yeah, I think you nailed that, Cammy, when you say it's safe to say that the game was a bit of a disappointment, especially for the neutral. Obviously, it was kind of very highly watched across the world, and I think no KD, no AD. But obviously, I actually think this was probably mainly a disappointment for how well the Nets played, and they played the Lakers off the court for the majority of the game. Which is obviously great for us because, I mean, any comfortable win's a good one, especially against last season's champions. So, I mean, keeping the Lakers under 100 was absolutely huge. And I think defensively we were good again. We need to kind of start looking at some performances where we play really well and have a look at the defensive end and obviously give the team the plaudits for when they do well. Because obviously they don't defend well often. But yeah, I think they've done well in this one. But yeah, once again, the bench stepped up in this one. I think Net Income from Nets Daily nailed it with the article I think they had out today when they said that the bench is quickly going from a liability to an asset. And it is. They're probably going, I don't know what the numbers are, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'd say they must be kind of trending towards one of the better bench numbers in the league over the last 10-game stretch or so. Yeah, TLC was absolutely awesome. I thought, what a guy to come in and rise to an occasion like that. I mean, it must be so easy when it's so highly watched to crumble. But yeah, he came in, he was absolutely clutch. I thought he was fantastic. Joe Harris, I mean, 6 for 7 from 3. I was watching, I think it was yesterday morning, I was watching a YouTube clip from TNT or something like that. And one of the reporters was like, who's this guy? Like asking, who's this guy? And they were like, oh, it's Joe Harris. He was like, when's he ever going to have a shooting night like that again? And I was really angry. I was like, that just shows you how little respect some of our players have around the league. But you've just got to laugh because they'll soon know come the end of the season who Joe Harris is. But I'll probably go to the other end of the scale from obviously you congratulating LeBron for his 35,000 points, Cammy, and say it was so nice to see him so angry. It was so good to see him go mental at the officials, and you could see him kind of talking with AD at the end about kind of obviously things that the Lakers were doing wrong. he knows the Nets are the favourites for the league at the moment. And you could just tell, especially with AD's recent injury problems, I think that certainly increased the Nets' chances of being the champions. But yeah, in terms of my books, LeBron's currently public enemy number one. That's purely because he's our biggest competition.
Yeah, nice. It was nice to see him getting stressed out. I know the Lakers were, I think they shot something like 22% from three for the game. So I think obviously we're going to put it down to great defense from the Nets side, but I think they just had a horrible shooting night that probably added to LeBron's frustrations somewhat. He did get absolutely turned inside out by Kyrie Irving as well, who faked him out massively, only sent him on a loop, which was absolutely fantastic to see. Yeah, you guys are absolutely right. LeBron rattled early, not getting foul calls, shots weren't falling. I think it's one of those things that we've kind of been saying, that it was excellent offense and good enough defense. And we still got caught out by a few times. LeBron was targeting mismatches off switches, which was a problem. But I think that's all we need to be. You touched on it as well, Cammy. We've improved to 10-1 against teams currently over 500. And the Lakers have actually dropped to 4-7 against over plus 500 teams, which is a really, really interesting stat. And, when it comes to playoff time, I think you're going to need to know you can beat these big teams. And I think that's slowly and surely becoming what we're getting accustomed to, which is really, really good. Like you say, with the bench unit has, Nets Daily summed it up perfectly. They've gone from a liability to a real asset and a strength. I think particular shout out this week has gone to Tyler Johnson, TLC, and Landry Shamet, who, you add those three guys to whichever other guys coming off the bench as a six man. Add that to Bruce Brown. If Jeff Green's not starting, that's the 8-9 guy playoff rotation. So that's really, really good signs. And like you say, we haven't even hit the halfway point of this season yet. So hopefully, health and all that stuff considered, and coronavirus and all that kind of stuff, it's just going to keep getting better, which is ridiculous. So really, really cool. So I'm going to go through to listener questions now. We got one in from Rich Barrett off Twitter. You'll know Rich. Everyone will know Rich Barrett from NBA UK fans. He says, which of the big three could potentially be the last man standing, the last one left when two others have gone elsewhere? Rich says, for me, it's Kyrie. Makes sense with his ties to New Jersey. What do you guys think of this one?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with Rich on that one, that probably Kyrie is the most likely due to his New Jersey roots. And I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but I've seen Kyrie obviously play for quite a while now, through different teams, and he finally looks like he's settled in Brooklyn. And I think you need to remember that obviously this is the first team that he's actually chose in his career. Obviously, he was drafted by the Cavs and then he was traded to the Celtics, but this is the first time he's actually chose his team. And obviously the fact that he's the youngest player out of the big three plays a factor in that as well. The only potentially James Harden, but that would purely be down to the fact that he essentially chose the Nets as well with that trade. I know he was traded, but he did pick the Nets as his team. And he has showed in the past that he does like to stay somewhere long term, so potentially him. But yeah, KD, I think he'll probably, I don't know why, I just feel like Seattle will probably end up getting a team again, and he might go back there, or he may go to Washington where he's from and finish his career there. But yeah, I think we'll have him for quite a long time as well and see the majority of his prime.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyrie's the obvious choice here. As you said, New Jersey roots, and the youngest, he's 3 years younger than Harden, 4 years younger than KD, and I mean, it makes most sense to want to have the youngest player for longer. He's going to be the player who can give more for longer. So yeah, definitely Kyrie, as much as I'd love to have KD and Harden for just as long. Hopefully this three can stay together as long as possible. And yeah, I think Aidan's quite right about KD. I think once his contract with us is up, he'll maybe sign a short deal and then go away. By the time his deal's up, he'll be 33, 34. So he'll probably not quite be on the decline yet. We've already mentioned that LeBron James is still performing well at close to 40. So yeah, I mean, we need to wait and see. But I think Kyrie's a stick on to be the last one standing on of this trio.
Yeah, again, a clean sweep. I've gone for Kyrie sticking around. But I kind of looked into it, and KD and James Harden both have a player option in 2022-23, whereas Kyrie doesn't. So there's the actual contractual sort of aspect of him staying around. So that would make most sense as Kyrie is the sole survivor. Add to that the hometown hero stuff that Rich mentioned in his question. However, you saw LeBron say the hometown stuff when he went back to Cleveland. He even won a chip there and still moved on. So that kind of remains to be seen. It would be great if we do win this season and we do win next season with these two guys. They may opt in for a bit longer and we turn into a bit of a dynasty. That would be absolutely pie in the sky, like amazing. That would be, they could, and we'll see 7, 11 and 13 in the rafters, when it's all said and done. But one thing I did note was KD's off the court business pursuits. He's a very, very busy man with that kind of stuff. I know 35 Ventures has their HQ in New York, so maybe that plays a factor in KD sticking around as well. I know with technology and whatever, you can kind of be wherever you want and still run businesses, and it's not as if he needs to clock into the office with that kind of stuff, but it's a consideration. But yeah, I would absolutely love it if we had 10 more years of Kyrie Irving in a Nets uniform, and there's a statue of him outside Barclays, but we shall see. Yeah, I hope that was a good enough answer for you, Rich. Then with that, we're going to look ahead to next week. Obviously, as we said at the beginning of the recording, we recording this on Saturday evening, so we're not playing the Clippers until Sunday. So that's up next, but you may very well be listening to this after that Clippers game. Then it's back to the Kings on Tuesday. Then Thursday we go and play the Magic, and then on Saturday it's the Mavs. So Clippers, Kings, Magic, Mavs. What do you guys think of that?
I mean, it's another tasty week ahead of us. Obviously, we're on a really good winning streak at the moment. I'd like to hope that we could finish our trip out west with a win over the Clippers. Obviously, we've already beaten them this season, and you'd like to hope that we can do it again. I think Paul George and Kawhi are both going to be back for this. Obviously, we'll be without KD. Whether we'll have Kyrie, I'm not too sure. But given the way the games have went recently without KD and Kyrie, with Harden kind of running things, I don't think we should be as concerned as some would maybe be. I think there's still enough there clearly to get us past teams. Obviously, the Clippers are a better team than both. Well, I'm saying both better than the Lakers. Probably not better than Lakers at full strength, but they're certainly better than the Suns. Yeah, we've beaten the Kings recently. You're expecting to beat them again. We'll also be back home in Brooklyn again, so that'll be great. Magic, we should beat. They are currently below 500 though, and you know what that typically means for us. And then finally, we'll take on the Mavs, Luka Doncic's Mavs, and I'm very excited for this one. I think Doncic is a fantastic player, future MVP of the league, and yeah, he's going to be a star in this league for a long, long time. So more than anything, I'm looking forward to seeing him ball out and do really well. He's going to be a player we need to really stop though, because he's near enough averaging a triple-double. I think he's on about 30 points, and then obviously near enough 10 rebounds and 10 assists a game. So that's huge. I'm going to be quite confident. I'm not going to get far too confident though. So I'll say we'll win 3-1, and I think we'll either drop the Clippers or the Mavs game.
I'm going to start by saying that this could be me getting it right 3 weeks in a row, because I said 3-0 last week, and then I said 2-1 the week before, and that was our record. So I think I've maybe turned around my really poor predictions, and I've started to come to something. But no, this week, really, I'm kind of going to go back to what I said earlier and say that this is where the Nets need to turn around their form against teams below 500. I mean, the Clippers game, obviously, that's going to be a tough one. We've played them already when we had KD, and it was a tough game. And then we obviously come back home, and we've got the Kings, the Magic, and the Mavericks. I think it's definitely going to be an easier run of games than it was last week, because that was really, really tough. But yeah, I think we'll continue this form. I think we're playing really, really well, even without KD, that I just don't seem to worry about any game at the moment. And yeah, I think potentially we do see KD back at some point this week. But I do see the Nets kind of continuing what they've been doing anyway, if he comes back or not. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go 4-0. I'm gonna go 4-0, just because for some reason I think we're gonna beat the Clippers. I think the type of lineup that we'll have, they'll really struggle against. And then I think we'll continue our record at home. But yeah, long may this record continue, because it puts us in such good standing at the end of the year if we can do the dirty work now. And I'm going to stick with my guns and say 4-0.
Love that. Yeah, I think we're so we're on a 5-game win streak at the moment. If we beat the Clippers, that's 6. And then I think if we beat the Clippers, I think we're starting to get to a bit of a place where we expect to win games, which hasn't been the case as Nets fans for a very, very long time. But it's building those winning habits that, Kevin Durant's kind of here saying that, building championship habits. And that's, getting a decent run. We were kind of expecting it to begin the season where I think you, Aidan, said we'd kind of go sort of 10-2 or something like that and really, really get a good run of form together. Maybe this is the time. The Clippers game will be really, really cool. But we get up for these games. You got to follow the data in this kind of stuff. Let's try and be scientific about it. So yeah, I think we'll beat the Clippers. Well, I hope we beat the Clippers. I think we beat the Kings. I think we certainly going to beat the Magic, I should hope. Dallas have been struggling, I think, with this season. So I think they could turn up. But I expect us to win that, just because we should have a bit more sort of a bit more of a run of form than they've had this season. So I'm tempted to go 4-0, but I'm going to stick with 3-1 as well. I think we're gonna let the Clippers have it, I think, and we're gonna let the Clippers take that W, and then once we get back to Brooklyn, it'll be protecting that home court, and we'll go 3-0 at home. But yeah, it's gonna be another absolutely cracking week ahead of us, and we're very, very much looking forward to it. But with that, that's all we got for this episode of BK2UK. Thanks to Aidan and Cammy for joining me, and we'll see you guys next time.